For dozens of individuals involved in this case, it was beyond the realm of possibility. It completely shattered the boundaries of everything they believed a human being could truly be capable of. But this was only the beginning, and nothing could have prepared them for what the investigation was about to uncover. During the afternoon of Friday, February 20th, 2015, teams of plainclothed FBI agents swarmed the quiet streets of Barangay Violeta on a day just like thousands before it. Parents walked with their children under the hot, humid sun. Vendors tended to their small street stalls, and stray dogs roamed through the dust-swirled alleyways. All whilst the net slowly closed in on 52-year-old Peter Scully, an Australian national who was renting a detached property on the outskirts of a small jungle. Numerous international agencies had been searching for the tall, slender, white-haired individual for the previous 5 years, and they had finally tracked down the most disturbing man on the internet.
Hello and welcome to I Could Murder a Podcast, Series 13, Episode 1. We are back with the darkest series we have ever done. And I'm joined by, he's still here, guys, Ben Carter.
Hello. Thank you so much for welcoming me in to another series. I can't believe we've made it this far. How are you, Producer Dan?
Very good. Welcome back, boys. Series 13. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm excited. I'm dubious, but feeling really good to be back on it and getting gritty.
Getting gritty. What are you dubious about? Because the rest of it, I was like, that makes sense. Dubious, I was like, okay.
No, it's just me. I'm dubious about the details and how I feel about them all.
Yeah.
Because you know what I'm like. I can make it quite visual in my brain.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yes. I mean, for those who don't know, Dan, when we read these things, he pitches it in first person a lot of the time. So us in the darkest series ever, it's going to be quite the roller coaster for producer Dan. It's going to be a roller coaster for all of us. But we thought Series 13 being, that number, let's up the ante slightly. It's snowy outside in the UK. It's very cold, very chilly. And let's warm ourselves up with someone who deserves to be in hell.
Yes.
That works.
Here.
That really works. Gritty Dan, gritting the roads at the moment.
Again, I just want to say what people are...
Yep, good.
But yeah, basically what we did was we went away after Series 12 and decided we're going to come back. Series 13, as Tom said, the darkest series ever. We came up with a list of around 100 cases, and from there, we've condensed them. And a lot of it was similar subject matter, so we tried to have some variation in there, but we've basically picked 12 cases that we feel are utterly disturbing beyond their core. We hope you look forward to hearing them from us. It's going to be a heck of a quarter of a year. Whoa, it's future Ben interrupting old Tom, Ben and Dan. I'm so sorry for that, but I wanted to quickly say a massive thank you to our partner for this series, Holy.
Go on! We are super excited to get Holy on board. Well, in fact, Holy are powering ICMAP this entire series, and we couldn't be more excited. And to be honest, we were so surprised at how good these taste. They are proudly zero sugar, but so flavoursome, and less than 20 calories per drink. It's amazing.
I've previously looked, because I bought a big fridge for the cabin, and I wanted to fill it full of drinks. So I was like, I want healthy energy drinks. Literally tried so many different things. I tried kombucha. The aftertaste is just not the one. And I've tried multiple different things, just taste very chemically. But when Holy approached us, I was so excited. And I was like, please be as good as I want this to be. And genuinely tastes amazing. Comes with some great branding, lots of different flavours. This series, being the darkest series ever, we definitely needed a bit more pep in our step. And our step has been pepped with this product right here.
Yeah, as Tom said, I was hoping that often is the case with these type of things. Please taste as cool as you look, which they certainly do. And the other good thing is, if you're looking for that extra spring in your step early doors, instead of sucking on a black coffee, why not have a Holy milkshake? Because somehow they make it taste like an actual milkshake without milk. It's magic.
To be frank, boys, sometimes when we get sponsors, it's quite hard to incorporate them into our daily life. And we always want to be genuine with our sponsors, of course. But this one, Holy, have genuinely surprised us, and they are now part of our daily routine, especially going to the gym as well. Very helpful.
And yeah, we're in a fortunate position from all the support you guys give us. We do say no to certain sponsors if it doesn't align with us and we don't enjoy them and it's something we genuinely don't think our audience like. But Holy sent us a lovely goodie box and we all really enjoy the products. We're very happy and excited to share that with you.
We want to pass this on to our lovely listeners and viewers. So if you fancy £5 discount on your first order, type in the code ICMAP5, or if you just want 10% off the entire order, use the code ICMAP. It's really, really worth it, and it really helps out the podcast more than you know. So please consider it.
And keep an eye on our socials because we'll be doing some giveaways with Holy as well.
Holy cow. Back to the episode.
And guys, feel free to say in the comments cases that you think may turn up or should turn up in this series. We always love to hear what you guys have to say. But without further ado, Ben, what is the case we are starting Series 13 with?
So today we are gathered to discuss the case of Peter Gerard Scully, also referred to as the most disturbing man on the internet. Daisy's destruction, Australia's most dangerous paedophile. Peter Scully, the dark web devil. And stuck in the monster's web. We're back.
I kind of regret saying that I've pictured this in first person, because this is the sort of case I don't picture in first person.
That's fine.
Just to clarify.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fair. We'll say that here. Dan doesn't picture this kind of case in first person.
No.
It's only the brutal murder of people he pictures in the first person. Is that better?
Yeah.
Good. But yes, a very dark one for us to start with. And Dan, can you set the scene a little bit more?
Years before he became the darkest man on the internet, Scully had fled his home country for committing a series of crimes of a vastly different nature and was now hiding in the Philippines, where, for a time, he had been free to act out on his darkest, most unimaginable desires. These crimes were unlike anything local investigators had ever encountered, and would become something none of them could ever forget. What began as vague reports of disappearances and exploitation gradually revealed a pattern so calculated, so cruel, so sinister, that seasoned agents struggled to comprehend the full extent of what they were now dealing with. Behind the concrete walls of his remote rented property, Scully had constructed a life and a vile career built entirely on deception, unrelenting abuse, manipulation, torture, and child murder. By the time the NBI moved in, his actions had escaped anything deemed possible in real life, and had made their way deep into the dark web, already spanning multiple locations with countless hours of digital material and an online network that simply defied belief. When agents finally placed Scully in handcuffs that afternoon, they knew they finally had their man. But they also knew their work was just getting started. Because what awaited them inside his property, and inside the numerous hard drives, cameras, and devices he left behind, would reveal a depth of human depravity that none of them were prepared to face. With the dark web devil now in custody, investigators were about to confront the darkest edges of humanity.
What enabled Peter Scully to completely vanish from Australia and reappear in the Philippines with a new life and a far darker purpose? How did his crime spread across multiple locations, devices, international borders, and online platforms without any immediate detection? When should local authorities have linked early reports of a number of missing and exploited children to Scully's known movements? And why did Peter Scully, a family man with a wife and 2 children back home in Australia, choose to embark on a spree of such despicable crimes that would later make him a global symbol of the darkest side of the internet?
So now we're going to piece together what we have of Peter Scully's background to see what it is that made him lead down this dark, dark path. Peter Gerard Scully was born on Sunday the 13th of January in 1963 in a small southern suburb within the state of Victoria, Australia. He was one of at least 2 children born into a working class religious family, having a sister whose name has not yet been publicly revealed. This is almost all that we are able to say about this absolute monster of a man before things very quickly start to become quite convoluted, speculative and murky. Unfortunately, we know nothing about the background, family life and upbringing of Peter Scully. We know nothing about his parents, not even their names. We know nothing about what their relationship was like and how this potentially impacted the family dynamic during Scully's childhood and adolescence. Typically, once a criminal is convicted, Information is gathered through interviews with family members, friends, partners, neighbours, colleagues, former teachers, peers at school, or even the perpetrator himself. However, for some reason, this has been extremely limited when it comes to Scully. And though he has promised to later write a tell-all journal about his life from prison, we're not privy to any of this personal information at the time of recording. As we saw in our David Fuller episode, which is another case of a series of absolutely deplorable crimes at the other end of the spectrum, attempting to trace a single moment, or even a series of moments, in Scully's early life that might possibly have shaped him into a man capable of such haunting crimes is frustratingly impossible. With so little verified information about his upbringing, his background, his family relationships, or his formative experiences, investigators, psychologists, and journalists are left piecing together tiny scattered fragments from a life largely shrouded in secrecy. Almost to the point that it becomes pure speculation or assumption. Unlike many convicted criminals whose histories can reveal early signs of trauma, abuse, neglect, or other contributing factors, Scully's past remains largely muddied, leaving the general public to face the unnerving reality that we may never fully understand what specifically set him on this nightmarish path, and why he chose to do what he did. Though it is easily said in the world of true crime, this particular case really does beg the question, was Scully born a monster, or was he formed into one?
Yeah, this is the thing about this case in particular is there's not, for a case of this magnitude, there's not a great amount of information out there, especially with regards to his background, his early life, his history, which for me, like when we sit down and research and write these episodes, that's kind of the most fascinating part, to understand their journey and what happened to them and why they chose to do what they did. With this part, I mean, you have to take all of his words with a pinch of salt anyway, which we'll get onto, but with this part, there's literally nothing. Couldn't even find parents' names, siblings, how many there are. We only know that there's at least one sister. Don't know if it's older or younger. But I know nothing about anything that could have happened to him in his early years. We'll touch on one alleged instance of abuse, but other than that, there is nothing, which is, I always feel really unprepared when we have cases like that. And with the David Fuller one as well, you know, an older gentleman, not a gentleman really, but an older guy, we knew nothing about his background at all. Yeah, it's tricky when we have cases like that. So here is what we do know about Peter Scully, and again, it's a bit of a morbid patchwork when trying to connect the dots that are his life. But in looking to the small amount of publicly available information, it does begin to paint a picture of a man who moved through most of his life in ways that seemed very ordinary and relatively plain on the surface. Scully got married in the 1980s, and together with his wife, he had 2 children, creating the outward appearance of a typical working-class family. The Scullys settled in a small house in the Melbourne suburb of Narre Warren, which has a population of around 30,000 people. Neighbours recalled their memories of him using only one word. It's not a nice word either. Dodgy. So, dodgy bloke, old Peter Scully.
That's the damning.
It's damning, isn't it?
I'd
What
say.
was the one we had in the minisode the other
dodgy.
day?
Wimp.
Wimpy. Yeah,
Wimpy.
Wimp and a dodgy.
Wimp.
Yeah. Over the years, Scully pursued a variety of different career paths, from a manual labourer to a landscape gardener to other small startup business ventures. To outsiders, these details might suggest a relatively normal life. Obviously, he was married, 2 children, but they masked the reality of what would later emerge. Behind this facade, Scully was capable of unimaginable cruelty. And yeah, just going to back to the suburb of Narre Warren, another infamous criminal that was born in this suburb is a man by the name of Banderley Debs, a serial killer who earned the nickname Satan of Suburbia by apparently every time he committed a crime or did a murder, he would leave notes and tell investigators that Lucifer was here. So was really keen on that nickname. The more you know. Back to Scully. The only small link, as I mentioned, that we can make to any kind of any signs of abuse or trauma experienced in his own life, and this is again at the time of recording, he said he's going to write a tell-all journal. Whether this happens or not, we're going off the information that's available currently. In a statement written to his lawyers whilst in jail awaiting trial, Scully claimed that he was repeatedly abused by a Catholic priest named Gerald Ridsdale at his local church, which his parents insisted he continued to attend. It is not clear if, prior to writing this letter, Scully had ever told anyone about these experiences, and it has also not been verified as truth, with Scully potentially portraying himself as a victim and looking to gain some sympathy during his trial. And yeah, this Gerald Ridsdale is a terrifying case in itself and dozens of victims, many of whom haven't yet come forward, many of whom have remained anonymous. And people kind of speculate that Scully was just trying to throw his name there. It sounds awful, throw his name in the hat. That's not what I'm trying to say, but basically trying to link himself to a known paedophile priest at the time that was in his area. Could have happened. Who knows? Whether you believe him or not, whilst some sexual offenders and murderers do report histories of childhood abuse, be that physical, emotional, or sexual, many people who experience child abuse never go on to commit sexual crimes or forms of abuse of a similar nature. And even fewer go on to do what Peter Scully did. And as I said, Gerald Risdale was a very famous case at the time of Scully's childhood, had at least 65 charges against him. It's not impossible. If Scully suggested that he was a victim of his, it's not impossible. But what we're saying is there's a lot of lies in Scully's life. So you have to kind of question some of the things he says.
Feeling unsatisfied in his life, during the early 2000s, one particular business venture that Scully launched, together with an unnamed business partner, was called The Key Result. Good name for locksmiths.
That's very
good.
Quick, Dan. That's nice.
That's good.
Thanks.
Result.
Living in relatively low-income neighbourhoods himself for much of his life, he marketed this property and housing scheme as a lifeline for low-income earners who couldn't qualify for traditional home loans. In reality, it was the polar opposite. The scheme encouraged clients to pay above-market weekly and monthly rent on properties that were supposedly owned by private investors, with the promise that they would acquire the title to the property after 5 years of payments. To those who needed financial help and a roof over their heads, it sounded generous, even innovative. But, like much of Scully's life, it was all built on deception, manipulation, and lies. The scheme suddenly collapsed into liquidation in 2005, owing more than 2.68 million Australian dollars to 20 investors, and a later investigation by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission linked Scully to a staggering 117 separate fraud and deception offences.
Yeah, that's mad. And that's the thing, that's the really annoying part about not having any details about his background, is why does he start this kind of catch me if you can type fraud lifestyle here? He's, almost 3 million Australian dollars he's conned people out of, 20 different investors, 117 separate fraud and deception offences. But I have no idea at what point in his life this switch happened. Seemed like he obviously needed the money. We know that much, but why and how? And obviously it needs to be a reasonable level of intelligence to come up with something like this as well.
Tricking 20 people and 20 people that have considerable amount of money. He obviously has that thing, let's say, with a lot of people who go on to commit horrible acts, they have charm, at least, psychopaths, able to charm their way through life and, do things which you think wouldn't be possible. But 117 separate fraud and deception offences is a lot for one man.
Yeah. And the key result, Dan, that is, as you said, if someone's looking to start up a locksmith's, why not?
Should have been a locksmith.
Yeah.
By this point, he had already been declared bankrupt twice, and his reputation amongst those who worked with him ranged from a pathological liar to someone who was deeply untrustworthy. One individual, who has not been named, lost more than $200,000 in investments to Scully, stated the following.
Tom, can you do the voice of a man that's lost $200,000 to a con?
Oh, but this is a victim that I'm doing the voice of.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'll do it. I'm not beneath that. Wait, I'm not above that. No, I won't do it. That's offensive.
Does it surprise me? Yes and no. The signs are always there for him, but it's gone to a darker place now. I had known him for quite a while, but it all happened so quickly. He had a good family. He told me about his company and about how many people he was helping and how many lives he had improved. He told me everyone was making money on their investments. I gave more than $200,000, my life savings, and then he vanished. I've become obsessed with tracking him. I know he left Australia, and I eventually tracked him as far as the Philippines. He was using 2 or 3 different names at this point, and then he simply vanished.
Apparently, knowing that he was being investigated for at least 117 offences, knowing that his family would also soon plummet into his debt, and knowing that his crimes were about to be exposed, Scully made the decision to flee Australia and head to the city of Manila in the Philippines.
So from this point here as well, you'd also think, okay, he's gone to the Philippines. He's somehow been able to flee the country without being caught. Now he'll just go into hiding. Doesn't happen. It's such a bizarre case, this one, and obviously frighteningly dark, but...
You could argue he is hiding still, in a way. Like, he's not...
Well, yeah.
He's not what he is, isn't he? Like, he's...
a bit of a chameleon.
He could be a chameleon. Yeah.
Yes.
With the VCW, which is the Victorian Consumer Watchdog, preparing Supreme Court action against him for unconscionable conduct, and more than 20 investors left out of pocket by over 2.68 million Australian dollars, Scully quietly slipped out of Australia in 2011 and, as we said, resurfaced in Manila, fleeing before the walls could finally close in. This is, once again, where things start to become quite murky. It's not clear if his marriage had broken down at this point. It's not clear if he had communicated any of his financial and criminal issues with his family. And it's not clear if he simply took his investors' money and fled the country, completely abandoning his family, his dependents, without any warning in the process. His wife, who quite possibly may be his ex-wife now, has not been publicly named, and understandably, neither have his children. Either way, Scully did briefly and boldly return to the country before engaging in an entirely different series of crimes in the Philippines. Other former associates recalled that in late 2011, which was around the same time that he abandoned his family and was widely known as a fraudster, Scully briefly returned to Australia with a teenage Malaysian girlfriend who he introduced to his friends as Ling. These former associates claim that Scully allegedly pimped Ling out as an escort using an unlicensed website and attending a series of suburban sex parties, despite the fact she may have been as young as 15 or 16 years old at the time. This chilling act provided an early glimpse into the predatory mindset of Scully, a mindset that would later spiral into something far, far darker. The relationship with Ling eventually broke down, and nobody has seen or heard from her since. So, after permanently relocating overseas, Scully started using the fake names of Peter Russell and Peter Riddle. Riddles!
Ooh, that got Tommy.
Yeah, got me right in the ear.
Sorry, Tom. It is believed he would visit multiple parts of the Philippines during his first year in the country, engaging in sex tourism and visiting numerous brothels in different regions of the country. At this point, a warrant was issued for his arrest back in Australia, and alerts were issued to all airports in the country to apprehend him immediately upon any attempt of re-entry. But he was not planning on returning to Australia ever again, and he was, in fact, about to begin one of the most appalling crime scenes that Australia, the Philippines, and the rest of the world has ever seen. And it is here we move on to the timeline of the most disturbing man on the internet.
So we begin by exploring what we can of the years of 2011, 2012 and 2013, eerily dubbed the lost years, before a clearer timeline of crimes begin to emerge. Annoyingly, like much of his life, what Peter Scully was doing in these first few years remains almost completely unclear. There are long, empty stretches in his record, periods where police, witnesses and investigators only have a few fragments of detail to go on due to the fact that he moved about so frequently and so quietly. It is, in a way, some of the most unsettling elements of the case. The 3 years lost while we know he was active in the country, but we don't yet know exactly how or where. What we do know is the environment he walked into. After escaping justice in Australia, and also escaping anywhere from 1 to 8 years in Australian prison for his 117 accumulated fraud and deception crimes, Scully would now started travelling around different parts of the Philippines, often introducing himself as Peter Russell or Peter Riddle, but typically introducing himself as Mr. Peter.
That does seem like he's able to come up with a couple of fake names, but has to use this. Well, it is the same first name. Can't go by a different first name because he just keeps forgetting.
Be caught out.
Yeah.
Kevin, I was shouting your name the whole time. You're just ignoring me. Kevin. Oh, yeah. What are you doing? What? Arriving as a somewhat wealthy, middle-aged white Australian man, he soon became very aware of what lurked just beyond the edges of society during everyday life. Things most people don't talk about, even when they see them. By the early 2010s, the Philippines was already widely considered one of the most heavily affected countries in the world for child exploitation and child abuse, especially online. Have you guys been to the Philippines before, Ben? I think you've been.
Never.
No?
No, never. Just
Maybe
not appealed.
early 2010s, isn't it?
Fucking hell.
No? I thought you had been. You were travelling.
No, never.
No. A few years when we lost touch for a bit, but I didn't know.
Fucking none of that, Bonds.
International organisations had been warning for years that the country was becoming a global hotspot for live-streamed child abuse, as well as the creation and distribution of child exploitation material, with the Philippines often in the top 5 countries globally of the production of illegal child exploitative materials. That's a top 5 you don't want to be in.
Agreed. Agreed.
Later detailed studies would actually result in the creation of several statistics on just how dire the situation truly was. One major investigation found that nearly 1 in every 100 Filipino children had been trafficked to produce new child sexual exploitative material in just a single year. That is an absolutely wild statistic.
Yeah.
1 in every 100 Filipino children. In many instances, the parents were aware and or involved in the process, which...
Even more wild.
Yeah.
This is just a world, not to be ignorant, it's just a world you don't even think of things like this existing or happening or being possible. But those stats are appalling.
Terrifyingly, between 2010 and 2017, the Philippines generated more reports of online child sexual exploitation than any other nation monitored by international agencies in the world.
Yeah, it's really, really disturbing. And by this point, Scully's moving around quite a lot to lots of different islands, lots of different parts of the Philippines, and he's being exposed to this for what people believe is the first time in his life. We don't know if he was his relationship with that Ling lady, there were question marks over that. But yeah, basically he's exposed to what you can and can't get away with in some of the poorer parts of the country. And this seems to flick a switch within him, which is, it's a trigger warning. This is now going to get very, very dark. So as we mentioned, Scully was initially based in Manila, renting rooms, drifting between short-term apartments, all paid for in cash. And here he was learning the rhythms of a country that was not yet watching him. But he wouldn't stay in the capital for long and would quickly begin to explore the country and explore exactly what he could get away with in this new legal system. From Manila, he began making repeated trips south to the island of Mindanao to Balay City in Bukidnon. And apologies if any of these pronunciations are incorrect. I've got some help with one coming up. He also moved to smaller, more remote communities like Barangay Violeta, which this is the one I got help with from my brother has a Filipino work colleague.
It should be Barangay Violeta.
There you go.
I think Google is saying Barangay Violeta, something like that, but I don't think that's how you should pronounce it.
So basically, there you go. Google tried to do us again.
Classic Google.
So he moved to this particularly remote village, and these were locations far removed from any kind of visible oversight, home to communities where poverty, desperation, and exploitation were prevalent. He moved often, never long enough to leave a clear footprint, but always long enough to establish new connections. As Tom said, he's gone into hiding here, but he's moving in plain sight, and he's moving, he's arriving as a somewhat wealthy, middle-aged white man who's introducing himself as being someone who's here to help these children and be a friend to these families. And it's just, he's testing the waters here from what I can understand. It's going to get very, very disturbing. So this was also the period where Scully became increasingly entangled in the sex tourism underworld that thrived on the margins of the Philippines' cities and villages. And it was here in these circles, in these shadowed spaces where money and vulnerability collide, that he began to discover the darker parts of society he would later exploit so completely. During these years, Scully formed relationships with several teenage girls, relationships that blurred unsettlingly between grooming, control, manipulation, and a desperate need for survival. Some of these girls and young women were as young as 15 and 16 years old in some instances, and they would eventually become his accomplices, drawn into his web long before authorities understood the true danger he posed. And somewhere along the path during these years of drifting, watching, learning, and embedding himself in the local culture, Scully also discovered the dark web and some of the highly disturbing things you could find on it under the veil of anonymity. How he learned to navigate it remains unclear, but by the time investigators finally pieced together large parts of his activities, it was obvious that he had used those years to understand the tools, networks, and online marketplaces that would later enable some of his worst crimes. And he was doing so in a country where the very vulnerabilities he sought out were already widespread, a landscape that tragically allowed him to slip deeper into the shadows before anyone realized what he had become. Scully, using his skills, experience, and sinister nature, saw this as an opportunity to harness his deepest and darkest desires.
Well, I think the dark web is mainly for kind of drugs, fake IDs, buying and selling data and stuff. I think people automatically think, oh, you can hire like hitmen, which you probably can actually.
I watched a great video on that.
Yeah, I think we've done a case before where someone might have got a hitman for the dark web.
But generally speaking, I think it's all about, data and drugs and stuff, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, data, drugs, weapons, and obviously this kind of material that he's dealing with.
Yeah.
Never been on it personally.
No, never.
No, not my area of the internet.
No.
I wouldn't even know how to begin with that. Did you Google dark web?
I think it's XXX rather than www. It's 666.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
You should put some Slayer on in the background, I think. Not saying Slayer fans are into that kind of thing.
Watch the comments roll in.
Creed fan? No.
Okay.
So we moved to September of 2014. By this point, Scully was living between 2 rented properties on the island of Mindanao. He spent a lot of time in Malabale City, but had a more rural and remote property 10 miles south in the small community of Barangay Violeta. As well as this, he and his young girlfriends would spend a lot of time on the northern coast in the city of Cagayan de Oro, located 70 miles away, which took almost 5 hours to complete a round trip to. He is also believed to have rented properties in Surigao, located 7.5 hours away. These distances and locations are important to the case, as a now 51-year-old Scully and his young accomplices would traffic numerous, dozens, potentially hundreds of young girls throughout these areas. They would specifically start to focus on young, impoverished, underprivileged Filipino children who were often found wandering the streets in these areas, begging for food or money. Scully and his girlfriends, who had been grooming and abusing, in turn, referred to these children as street kids. The children, some of whom were infants and some of whom were teenagers, were not at all hard to find. They were very desperate and very hungry. And instead of approaching the children himself, Scully would encourage and reward his young girlfriends to do this part for him.
Yeah, this is absolutely bleak. I got a bit excited and made a map of his different locations to show you his movements. But basically, he was renting lots of properties in cash and moving. This is just one island that we know he was on, which is Mindanao. And he was moving between all these locations and then traveling to the major cities and more remote villages and basically moving children between these locations and houses. And this is where the dark web will now start to become involved. But he was repeatedly moving between those properties.
Just looking at the image you made, Ben, is that Monopoly houses?
Yeah.
That you put there?
Oh, I didn't search Monopoly. I just searched house.
Okay.
They do look a bit Monopoly house.
I wouldn't want to land on that if I was rolling the dice.
Yes. Yep. Pay up.
keep me away from that.
Yeah.
The help approaching these young children reluctantly came in the form of other underage girls and very young women who would briefly enter relationships with Scully. One girlfriend was Lizelle Magallo. Another was Maria Dorothea. And there were multiple other unnamed girlfriends or female acquaintances. One such young woman was Carmien Alvarez, who was known as the Sweet Sweet.
Rocky Robin.
Also known as Sweet Sweet, Honey Sweet, and Sweet Canusa, who was just 18 years old at the time of her eventual arrest, and believed to have been between 14 and 16 years old when she first met Scully whilst working as a sex worker. According to Carmien, not long after they started seeing each other, Scully made the following bizarre request to her.
I didn't know he was a bad guy. He said to me, "Can we adopt some street kids?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't think so. What if my young sister could live with us?" He said, "No, I don't want your sister. I want to help street kids." Then I met these 2 street kids. I asked them if they wanted to come home with me, and the kids said yes. They were around 9 and 12 years old, the exact age Peter had asked for.
As well as this, Scully would approach heavily impoverished parents and offer their children food, money, shelter, and education if they allowed them to live under his roof.
That's one of the really sad things I found in this case as well, is obviously that stat we said earlier about the parents kind of being implicit on some of these things. A lot of the time the parents were thinking they were giving their children a better start in life by, getting educated by someone from the Western world, a rich man that's come over, their children will be fed, have shelter, and then to go on to find out what they actually were putting their children in the hands of this absolute, realising they're putting the children in the hands of this absolute monster must have been completely unbearable to find out.
There were as well, because initially I was like, how on earth is that trust formed? And obviously these people were very desperate, but at the same time there had also been aid workers all over the country providing support to children, helping with their education, medication, food. And Scully once again has taken advantage of that fact, and it's about to get, again, I feel like I've said this 3 or 4 times, it's about to get particularly disgusting.
As well, I mean, he was able to convince people, in Australia, like 20 rich people to invest in what he's doing. So like he's obviously got the gift of the gab, and as you said, people in desperate situations, want to believe that they are going to be giving their children the best start. So yeah, it's horrific. That month, under Scully's supposed orders, Carmine approached the 2 young girls by an overpass which connected 2 popular shopping malls in Kagaya and Dioro. The girls were cousins. She promised them money, hot meals and sweets. She did this in broad daylight while Scully waited in a nearby vehicle, taking the children from the street side and into the car. Nobody batted an eyelid. The couple then took the children back to Scully's rented and isolated property, and this is where the true horror began. Once inside the house, Scully forced the young girls to drink large amounts of alcohol, a reminder that they were just 9 and 12 years old, before he then forced each of them to begin performing sexual acts upon one another, as well as on himself, whilst his girlfriend took photographs of the act. Carmine claims that she left the property later that night, upon Scully's instruction, and did not return for 5 days. When she returned, the young girls were still there with Scully, but they were now heavily malnourished, wearing dog collars, restraint chains, and both of them informed Carmine that Peter had begun hurting them. Rosie, the 12-year-old in this instance, went on to state the following about her ordeal.
After eating, Peter asked us to be naked. We were photographed and he took a video. He forced me to do things to my cousin while he directed and filmed it. While we were being filmed, Peter assaulted us. While he was assaulting us, I cried. Carmine told me to shut up, and she covered our faces with pillows so we wouldn't scream. The following day, after breakfast, we were asked to dig a grave in the basement. He told us that we were going to be buried in the graves that we were digging. I hope I can forget this moment when I grow up.
Upon seeing the girls in this way, Carmine immediately freed them and convinced them to run away while Scully wasn't present. The 2 young girls quickly fled the area and were taken to a nearby police station where they bravely reported their experiences. The hunt was now on for a tall, skinny, middle-aged white man with bright grey hair, but he was nowhere to be found when police headed to the location they described. Instead, they found Carmine, who was immediately arrested. Scully had gone into hiding on the island. There were now 2 nations searching for him, but more would follow in the coming months as a result of a particular video surfacing in Europe, and the international manhunt for Peter Scully was officially underway. But it would turn out there were far more crimes that had already been committed and not yet brought to the police's attention.
Later that year, in different parts of Europe, a video had started circulating around the internet that had originated from the dark web. This video was known only as Daisy's Destruction by NLF, No Limits Fun. During a short trailer for the video, the following text appears on screen.
Christ. Introducing Daisy's Destruction. A pedo delicacy in 1920 by 780 resolution. More than 45 minutes to enjoy. Only available for a limited time. Come and see a child's mental ruin, her innocence lost. Used as a tool, she will learn to please her mistress. Her body will be ravaged, her dignity stolen. Relentless, her mistress will break her. Helpless, she will hang for your amusement. Would you dare to witness Daisy's destruction?
That's probably one of the most brutal paragraphs I think we've ever had in the podcast.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's pure referencing how innocence will be lost, mental ruin, doing all this with the absolute knowledge that exactly what they're kind of pain they're putting them through. Yeah.
I mean, this Daisy's Destruction is kind of the big, I guess, headline under the case of Peter Scully. This is why most people are aware of the case, and this is what brought a lot of light to the case. It's It's highly disturbing, and this is obviously something he's done whilst technically hiding from another life of crime in Australia, and it's just how this switch in his mind and his accomplices, he's also groomed into doing this, but they are also responsible. We've never covered a case quite like this. So the Daisy's Destruction video was commercially sold and distributed around the dark web to paying customers for up to $10,000. In the video, a white male with a pixelated face shouting and aggressively urging others on with a distinctive Australian accent and matching Scully's general description, as well as two masked Filipino women, were observed molesting, torturing, abusing, and raping two young girls, Cindy and Lisa, and a baby, Daisy, of whom was just 18 months old. Apparently, all three had been handed over to Scully by their parents, who he had convinced that he would feed, educate, and look after. The 18-month-old is then hung upside down by her legs, where she is repeatedly sexually assaulted by all three perpetrators whilst she screams, completely unaware of what is happening to her. All before she is violently beaten and her head is bashed against a hard table surface. The videos all contain extremely graphic scenes of repeated torture, sexual abuse, and brutal violence. Teams of police forces from Germany, the United Kingdom, Holland, and Australia analysed the series of videos and were able to track its origin to somewhere in the Philippines. Australian Federal Police Officer Paul Hopkins, who was actually leading the search for the people behind Daisy's destruction, stated the following.
The perpetrator of these horrendous acts is the most depraved individual I have ever come across in my 26 years in the police. I've worked in 9 different countries. I've worked in a lot of different roles, but I've never seen anything like this.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, this is all absolutely just disturbing beyond belief, to the point that Daisy's destruction and other forms of similar hurtcore were supposedly banned in other paedophile rings. Even other paedophiles who were already doing absolutely deplorable things looked down on this and were disgusted by the acts of this person when it started circulating online. The 18-month-old baby was later found alive by her parents, but she experienced lasting physical and psychological injuries, and she remains deeply traumatized and becomes hysterical when the memory of her abuse is triggered.
At this point, numerous international police agencies arrived in the Philippines to work together with NBI agents, the Philippines National Bureau of Investigation, in order to try and locate Peter Scully. Those searching were predominantly Filipino, Dutch, and Australian. Investigators likened it to a game of cat and mouse. They arrived in one area, showed locals photos of Scully. They confirmed they had seen him, took them to a rented residence, and he was already gone. This would happen over a period of 2 months. At this point in the investigation, 8 local girls from as young as 3 years old through to 13 years old claimed to have been abducted and abused by the man. They ultimately located 15 different properties and 5 different filming locations, which corresponded with the footage observed in the Daisy's Destruction video series. Many of the properties had rooms that appeared to have been modified into dungeons, with the windows covered, all furniture removed, and the doors having added external locks. Many of the rooms had comic books or magazines stuck to the walls like wallpaper. Tragically, in one of the locations, the investigators unearthed what appeared to be skeletonized remains in a grave beneath a set of kitchen tiles. This was the body of an 11-year-old girl by the name of Cindy who had been strangled to death. She too appeared in a video together with Scully, with one of his former girlfriends, Lizelle Magallo, claiming that Scully raped and tortured the girl, then made her dig her own grave before he strangled her to death with a piece of rope as she dug. The emergence of the Daisy's Destruction videos, together with Rosie being brave enough to go to the police and the evidence obtained by numerous properties Scully had rented, led to the discovery of an intricate and lucrative international child sexual abuse ring operated by Scully that offered pay-per-view video streams on the dark web of children being sexually abused and tortured. This was his dark web forum, NLF, No Limits Fun. Digital evidence obtained from his Mindanao property suggested many more victims, potentially held captive for weeks, months or even years. Through the dark web, he allegedly offered a live stream service as well as a made-to-order service, fetching $10,000 per request. Some customers could apparently pay as little as $15 to observe inappropriate child exploitation material in some form. As well as this, foreign paedophiles visiting the country would directly offer parents small amounts of money ranging between $10 and $30 in order to perform sex acts and undress on camera. A trend that was, and still is frighteningly all too common in the most impoverished areas.
In total, Scully may have fulfilled up to 70 separate requests through the dark web. Among the victims who had their ordeals recorded and sold over the internet was a 5-year-old who was raped and tortured by Scully and his 2 masked female accomplices. The made-to-order videos were sold to paedophiles all over the world, with Scully abusing multiple victims from the age of 18 months through to 15 years old. According to investigators, whatever the consumer or customer instructed Scully to do, he would do. And very little was off the menu, meaning that he would even murder his young captives if the price was right. Multiple sales were confirmed to have been made by individuals in Germany, Holland, China, the United States, and the United Kingdom. It's believed not only did he have customers all over the world, but he also had local in-person help from Filipino nationals who lived nearby. He raped and abused his young captive victims every single time he made a sale on the dark web, and, most likely, even when no sales were being made. Many were groomed into staying in the property, others fled sworn to secrecy, and it is believed that multiple girls last seen with Scully have never been seen again. As well as murdering 11-year-old Cindy, he was also suspected of the murder of a 12-year-old known only as Barbie. 8 female victims up to the age of 13 at the time of the offences were reportedly placed into witness protection at this time. Both Carmine Alvarez and Lizelle Magallo also physically and sexually abused children in Scully's videos whilst wearing masks. Filipino news media would later dub the women the Savage Girls. Both young women came from troubled and impoverished backgrounds, with Carmine becoming a sex worker as a child and Lizelle being a victim of child trafficking. Friday, February 20th, 2015. We return to the start of our episode. Following multiple sightings and tip-offs, teams of plain-clothed NBI agents swarmed the quiet streets of Barangay Violeta, armed with 6 warrants for an arrest, where they were eventually able to locate 52-year-old Peter Scully. Police circle his detached rented property and order him to the ground before he is able to make an escape attempt. Several officers make their way into the property, while Scully is placed face down on the living room floor in his underpants. Police body cam footage caught the dramatic moment that he was finally located and arrested.
February 20th, 4 years after fleeing Australia and committing unspeakable crimes, this is the moment Scully is caught.
Give me your name.
It's Peter Scully.
What?
It's Peter Scully.
Peter Scully.
We have 6 warrants for your arrest. Wow. Okay?
Already, investigators believe they have a watertight case against this father of 2.
You put on your pants. Yeah.
But they also fear there are more victims to be found, alive or dead.
Can I get my cigarette?
It sounds quite a comical image. It does really go. It makes him look absolutely pathetic.
Yeah.
It's very odd. Like after knowing all the stuff we know, obviously about Scully and the crimes he's committed, how can someone in this situation, in this location, kind of still maintain that power and able to do all these things? It's yeah.
Yeah. It's really pathetic. It's the right word. He looks like an absolute coward, immediately gets to the floor, asks if he can have his cigarettes, but he's immediately giving his real name as well. Seems very shaky when you're thinking, who is the head of this dark web operation that's all over the world? And it's this pathetic devil of a man in a bit of a dive house. And he's immediately just, He's a different person when interviewed, and there's a brief bit of interview with, is it 60 minutes Australia? And he puts a bit of a front on there for the cameras, but when you see him being arrested, he's an absolute pussy. Absolute pussy boy.
What a fucking worm.
Yeah.
Well, worm's been kind, isn't it? Christ.
Yeah.
Harsh on worms, to be fair.
Defo.
I quite like worms.
Yeah.
Quite like worms. clip that. But yeah, I want to shout out as well Tara Brown, who is the presenter of 60 Minutes Australia. She is incredible.
Yeah.
She really kind of puts Scully to the fire and the flame in the interview. She really goes at him. She says as well how pathetic he looked in that arrest, and he's like, kind of goes, I didn't even realise that, thanks for that kind of thing. She gives him a real grilling, and she's just great. So I want a big shout out to Tara Brown, and that series 60 Minutes Australia is always good anyway. It's always like a really well put together piece. But yeah, you're completely right, Ben. He has a complete front in those interviews. Yeah, and when asked about the location of Barbie, who is still deemed missing, Scully responded, "From now on, my answer will be, everything will be in my journal. You can keep asking questions, but that will be my answer. Everything will be in the journal. Anyway, are we almost done? Because we keep going around in circles." Yeah, I'll go into a bit more like when we kind of have a bit of light relief at the end about kind of what he reminds me of and things like that. But it's, he definitely has, he's really cocky and arrogant in that. But then she does ask some great questions. But his response is so creepy as well.
Yeah.
Like, he's trying to do a whole power play, but she sees right through it and kind of like just shoots him down. Can't praise her enough.
Yeah.
From watching the footage.
Yeah, she is really great in that I guess documentary, and talks down on him a lot, and he kind of tries to be smarmy and dance around the questions a little bit, but she absolutely wins that back and forth. So after Scully was arrested, he was taken to nearby Caygan de Oro City Jail whilst he was processed and awaiting trial. He was facing a total of 75 charges, including 7 confirmed victims of rape and trafficking. Additional charges included kidnapping, rape, false imprisonment, and torture of minors, as well as murder and selling syndicated child sexual exploitation, child abuse related to cybercrime, indecent shows / obscene publications, and child sexual exploitation in relation to cybercrime. So much of the Philippines, upon learning of Scully's crimes, demanded the death penalty be reinstated, as the country had abolished it back in 2006 following fierce opposition from the Catholic Church, which is the religion of 80% of Filipinos. Scully's crimes against babies and young girls in the Philippines were so depraved and so disturbing that the country was considering calls to reintroduce the death penalty. Paul Hopkins, the Australian lead investigator into the search for Peter Scully, stated the following.
There are 2 cases against Scully in the Philippines, as well as the original fraud and deception cases back in Australia. The first case is the slavery one. The fact that he's kept 2 young girls in a house and sexually abused them and tied them in dog chains and allegedly made videos of them. That's one case. The second case involves the holding of young victims and sexually abusing them, leading to extreme violence as well as abuse. And then, unfortunately and horrifically, it ended in the death of one of the young victims.
So as I mentioned a bit earlier, Tara Brown of 60 Minutes Australia interviewed Scully, and she was actually literally standing next to him when the infamous mugshot photo was taken. So she was there on the ground kind of when this was all kind of kicking off, which again, incredible that she was there at the time. When Tara asked him about why he committed the atrocious series of crimes, Scully responded as follows.
The answer is, I don't have an answer. I hardly ever had an urge. It's not like a hungry dog that's got to feed every 3 or 4 hours. It's not like that. It's really not. It's almost not an urge at all. What I'm looking for, what I'm searching for, is the real reason why I took that road and what drove me to it. In Australia, and in the first 6 months in the Philippines, I wasn't like that.
So that's a really infuriating way where he's shifting the blame completely, and he's kind of saying, I want to know why I do these things. It's not my fault. Something's made me become this way. And it's quite a clever way of doing it, because it's completely taking any responsibility away from himself. And it's, it's the thing that we want to know what's driven someone to become the way they are, but it's completely, ducking out of the way and not having any responsibility or accountability for his own actions. The fact of saying, I never had the urge to do it, I just did it. So was he just doing it purely for the money? Was that the only thing that was driving him? But it is curious as to why there was I know there's very limited information before he did go over to the Philippines. Because he even gets a bit shirty or a bit appalled when Tara mentions the fact about his own children. Did he abuse his own children? He's like, no, he gets very defensive about that. It's a very odd and interesting interview. Definitely recommend people who are interested in this case to watch it, because it's very very confronting and very just, he is a monster. But he's just so arrogant as well.
Yeah. It's because we don't know what happened in Australia and what happened in his background. Whether or not you believe his story about the Catholic priest or not, he's arrived in the Philippines and tried to go into hiding somewhat. And then is it just a coincidence that he's discovered this whole other world? And then that's always been in him, but the combination of being in that location and knowing he can manipulate and get away with these depraved crimes, then you obviously throw in the financial question as Tom did. It's so bizarre. And he's not come out and said anything. He keeps referencing, it'll be in this journal. It'll be in the journal.
Yeah, which seems to be, again, I think that could, it's a money-making thing rather than anything. But yeah, it's
there are so many other ways to make money, even on the dark web, fortunes of money, and not doing the most horrible acts imaginable.
Yeah.
So he's obviously driven by it.
Yeah, 100%. During his time incarcerated, Australian taxpayers have contributed more than $1 million in Australian dollars in legal costs for Scully. During the very first hearing, Scully laughed and joked with his co-accused. He also contested all of his charges, forcing all of his victims who were in witness protection the horrifying ordeal of having to testify against him and re-endure their experiences. His crimes were described as one of the darkest moments in Filipino criminal history. One of the two prosecutors leading the case against Scully, Ruby Malinog, stated the following with regards to seeing the Daisy's destruction videos and what she thought should happen to Scully.
They were the most devastating thing I've ever seen. I cried when I was watching them. In fact, I feel like crying now while talking about it. It was hard to believe what I was seeing, that somebody could do those things to children. If I had my choice, it would be death for Peter Scully. I want it to happen. We have to send a strong message for others that if they come to the Philippines and torture and abuse our children in this way, they will be investigated with the full force of the law and executed. You kind of also forget that, don't you? Outside of these horrible acts, these police officers and investigators have to go through this and watch this and, in detail.
Yeah,
it must be so traumatic for them as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think I mentioned before, a friend of mine had to do grading of hard drives and grading of stuff, and I thought that was that. But also, it's looking at trying to track down the locations. Is there a school jumper on the floor? Can they figure out where the school the victim goes to? Can they figure out any links to the people? So they can't just go, there's 6 of these things, so therefore he should be in prison for this long. It's not just about the perpetrator, it's about the victim, and it is having to figure those things out. It's it's a truly horrific thing someone needs to do, but it's such a noble task for someone to take that on that role to try and try and get justice.
So we move to October of 2015. Shockingly, a sudden electrical fire tore through the evidence facility that was housing Scully's computer logs and digital records, destroying critical material that investigators had relied upon in order to trace the full scope of his operations. So there's questions over this straight away. Everything in terms of the investigation did line up to an electrical fire, but it's just very convenient for it to happen at this particular time. Despite this setback, proceedings moved forward against Scully and several individuals accused of aiding his criminal enterprise, including 4 men. And we haven't mentioned these men at this point, but these are individuals that would also help to apparently traffic children between these locations on the island. So this was German national Christian Rausch, Filipinos Alexander Lau and Maria Dorofea Shia, and Brazilian national Haniel Caetano de Oliveira. So these were all now had trials against them. 3 years later, on the 13th of June 2018, Scully and his former girlfriend Marianne Alvarez were each handed life sentences for their role in the abuse network. Another key accomplice who we've mentioned several times in the timeline, Lizelle Magallo, received a cumulative sentence of 126 years, whilst Liao and Cha, 2 Filipino males, were each sentenced to 9 years in prison. The legal repercussions continued to build. In November of 2022, Scully was convicted in a separate trial and given an additional 129-year sentence, meaning that he will be 188 years old at the time that he finishes his sentence. He looks about that now, to be fair. He looks very flaky.
Still.
Judge Jose Escobedo further ordered Scully and Marian Alvarez to provide 5 million Philippine peso, which equates to nearly $87,000 in restitution towards the known and confirmed victims. Peter Scully is currently housed at the Davao Prison and Penal Farm, locked away in what many former inmates and locals describe as an overcrowded, poorly maintained prison where the strain of daily life is severe and the conditions are extremely harsh. Who is that guy that does the most dangerous? Is it Rafael?
Rafael
Yeah.
Rafael.
I was expecting maybe that he might have done an episode
Right.
on. Yes, yeah. This kind of links into one of those episodes maybe, but I don't think he's covered this prison as of yet. But it looks very, very bleak, the daily circumstances he now finds himself in. The prison was built to house 350 inmates, but it typically houses close to 2,000. Here, Scully has reportedly voiced several complaints about the conditions of his confinement, including anger at overcrowding, not being able to keep a mobile phone or an electric fan, as well as the quality of the food provided. And according to one Australian newspaper, at one point he insisted he should receive fresh chicken, pork, corned beef, and Western-style dishes.
Fuck off, you rag.
Absolute rag.
Absolute rag.
Big old rag. Apparently was initially received somewhat VIP treatment, according to some newspapers, where he would be, I would have assumed, especially because Tom and I recently did an episode on the murder of Ian Watkins. I assumed he would have been targeted in this prison for his crimes, but initially apparently he was treated a bit of
Do you
VIP.
think the idea would be that people think he has money, therefore power, and if they,
Potentially,
treat him well, he'll look after them, and
Yeah. So Scully's sister, and this is the entire reason we know he has a sister, is that she has also spoken publicly about what she describes as harsh and deteriorating conditions inside the facility. The reality of Scully's new life behind bars is far more unforgiving. Cramped cells, limited access to basic amenities, and a general atmosphere of neglect that someone with his sentence and notoriety would find deeply hostile. Where he once dictated every aspect of the lives of defenseless children, he is now subject to the whims of prison authorities and the brutal hierarchies of fellow inmates, many of whom are known to single out offenders like him for violent attacks. And this is why I'm surprised, unless they just haven't been reported, I am surprised that he's been protected for this long. I am really surprised by that. Again, I'm only going by when Tom and I covered the Ian Watkins case recently, how frequently people had access to him that wanted to cause harm.
It must be to do with money, because child abusers are universally fucking hated.
do you think in a country
Targeted in
where
prisons.
thing like child abuse is so prevalent, is it slightly desensitized slightly towards that?
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, it is surprising. But yeah, I guess it is. It can only be money.
Well, given the brutal nature of his crimes, as I said, as we recently saw in our Ian Watkins episode, there is a constant risk that he may be targeted by other inmates or criminal networks. Child abusers and traffickers are often assaulted in prison, making his existence inside there all the more precarious. Between the weight of his convictions, the overcrowding, and the likelihood of violence from fellow prisoners, Scully's prison life has been deemed by some as a worthy punishment for crimes committed that were truly beyond belief.
Among those who obtained and circulated the Daisy's destruction material was one of the most prolific distributors of child sexual abuse content in history, Scully's fellow Australian Matthew David Graham, known online by the alias Lux. Arrested when he was just 22 years old, Graham oversaw a disgusting network of notorious hurtcore sites operating in the darkest corners of the internet. He later claimed he had shared the Daisy's destruction footage on his own platform in the name of freedom, a justification that underscored the disturbing ideology driving his online empire.
Yeah, there's we've talked before. Tom and I are big fans of Case File, the podcast Case File. They have an episode called Operation Cacam, C-A-C-A-M, and that dives a lot more into this Matthew David Graham and Lux and a whole world that just before I just had no idea things like this really existed. It's quite ignorant. But it's worth a listen if you have the time.
As well as this, in 2021, Daisy's destruction resurfaced once again when the material was discovered in possession of American reality television personality Josh Duggar, who was made famous from the TV series 19 Kids and Counting, and he was the eldest child in that family. I think it was a TV show on TLC. Very disturbing to think that someone with that inclination is part of a family of that many children involved. Its presence among the digital files examined by investigators reignited public attention on the global spread of Scully's crimes and the far-reaching network of individuals who had sought out his content.
So obviously there was the Daisy's destruction content, then there were also these pay-per-view and custom-made services that he offered, and these were going all around the world. I mean, what was it, 70 different customers or close to 80 different customers around the world? It's just... And there are other victims out there that haven't come forward. There are other children still missing. There is another young girl by the name of Barbie who is believed to have also been murdered by Scully, but they don't have enough to convict him of that. It's just an absolute horror show.
Yeah.
We saw it a lot in Series 12. I used a lot of Google Maps, and that's usually the first thing I do is look at locations and get a feel for the environment and stuff like that. And there are lots of different locations for this case, but the Barangay Violeta location, I tried to basically use the coordinates to get as close to that house that he was arrested in as possible. And the coordinates I put in very eerily landed on a woman with an umbrella covering her face, standing next to a young child and wearing a black t-shirt with 3 words on it: violence, terror, and chaos. And I just found that, really eerie that was literally what it landed on. But then if you start scrolling around and looking around the streets here, you can just imagine, because that's why I went on to make the map. If you put yourself, he was basically using that area as a base. Then he was traveling into the bigger cities where there were lots of, as he called them, street kids that were begging out there for help. And he would then drive for hours with his teenage accomplices, bringing them back to locations like this where he could essentially put them in a dungeon and live stream their abuse. And it really brings to life that location. Obviously, it's as close as I could get, but when you start looking around the streets, it's, there's lots of, wild dogs roaming the streets. There's houses that you can just walk up to. There's kind of a small jungle areas, street vendors. There's lots of children walking around on their own. And just to imagine Scully there, that's his new world. People trusting him.
We said before, the Western world, how heavily CCTV'd it is, and that is completely off-grid, and not completely off-grid, but you know what I mean? It's not being surveyed as such a fashion. So you can see why people like him would go there and prey on all those people. And it's truly horrific.
When we actually started to do the shortlist for the cases for Series 13 back in kind of November 2025, the Daily Mail released a story that a satanic child abuse ring was busted in Sydney as 4 men were charged over their involvement. And this was, again, circulating, creating, distributing content very similar to Peter Scully. So it just goes to show that this is, it's also happening in other countries. The dark web is, potential, and the introduction of AI now as well, and what people can do with that on the dark web and off the dark web at the moment is highly controversial. So, there you go.
So I was just thinking, as you were speaking there, Ben, how it's always so shocking to hear about these sorts of cases. I mean, this could easily be one of the worst ones we've done in the sense of child abuse specifically, but if local authorities are getting a grip on this, or if it's a case of, like you just kind of touched on there, this horrible dark web world is growing and growing and growing. And obviously driven by, like we mentioned, money, but also depraved wants and needs. It's just, I don't know if it's just an interesting thought to think whether it is just constantly growing, or if, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but.
I mean, this is just playing devil's advocate. I mean, with pornography being so readily available to the younger generation, I know obviously the UK have implemented a thing needing to log in and prove age and stuff like that, but violent pornography. And it's like, if someone gets obsessed with that from a young age, it's like we say with Ian Watkins, he kind of would want to try and outdo and get darker and darker. And the dark web, you just kind of think, is there links with people getting into that kind of porn at a young age and then wanting to go darker and darker with it all? Who knows?
Yeah.
That's not me saying that's what I believe. It's just an idea. It's scary. I mean, already at our age, I kind of think like some technology is passing me by, like in terms of I don't know certain things and how it's used and stuff like that. And you think like the younger generations are only getting better and better with it, with AI as well. Like you said, it can be a tool used for good. It can be a tool that could be used for evil. Yeah, it's a truly worrying thing.
I was just going to say about the whole AI thing, the fact that it's somewhat unlegislated and almost completely unregulated, which is madness. It's just a bit of a free-for-all out there. And like you mentioned, Tom, if people are doing this from a young age, which all the kids now have AI, it's just a scary world to be stepping into. So, yeah.
So yes, guys, that is the case of Peter Scully, the most disturbing man on the internet. We did say at the beginning of the episode it's going to be the darkest series yet. I think this very much shows that. It is a very dark one. But we are going to end with a palate cleanser, a bit more light-hearted content at the end of each episode, just to kind of, try and decompress. I think Ben's come up with a lovely name. Ben, do you want to introduce the name you came up with for this?
Sounds like something like people would use on LinkedIn maybe. So I don't know, Diary of CEO type talk, but decompression session. Just where we can kind of be ourselves a bit more, take a breather, have a chit chat, and maybe just find a bit more lightness, because some of these episodes there's very little room for levity.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. This is the first decompression session of the series. I don't know, Ben, if you had any lookalikes for him, did you? Or
well, I've got something else for you, if you're interested.
Yeah,
I mean, it's quite on brand as well, because we just talked about obviously the darkness of the dark web, and I stupidly, in typical Ben fashion, was wondering if there's any kind of brightness on the dark web, and I found a little bit.
Go on.
I mean, it could be an interesting fact. It could be a decompression session. I'll give you one, and if you like it, I've got 3 more.
Okay.
So
3 more. Okay. How long are they? That's the thing.
Half a paragraph each.
Okay.
So basically, I wanted to ask a question: is there any brightness on or in the dark web? Although it's mainly known for illegal marketplaces and unsettling and highly disturbing content, there are a few slightly brighter or at least stranger things you can apparently find on the dark web. We'll start with number 1, gnoming. Do we all know what gnoming is? Or getting gnomed?
Nom 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 nom.
Oh.
I don't know what gnoming is.
No clue.
Okay, so apparently, the first term that comes up in gnoming is you use it in online betting. You create loads of accounts on every bettor, and you just take advantage of their new customer offers. But gnoming as a prank was first reported back in 1986 in the Sydney Morning Herald, and it entails garden gnomes being anonymously and repeatedly placed at a selected person's address, invading their daily life and creeping them out. So that's when you gnome someone, right? But what about the dark web version of gnoming? Any guesses to where this might go?
Is it just
Some sort
spamming
of
inboxes?
It's still gnoming. What did you say, Tom? Sorry?
Spamming inboxes with pictures of
No,
gnomes?
that probably exists. But no, this one is very different. So via an onion site on the dark web, you can apparently take gnoming to a whole new level. One website in particular, claiming to be the best gnoming service on the dark web, states the following. Someone bothering you, gnome their yard. Our basic service utilizes over 500 gnomes. We will place them regardless of security measures. As well as this, we offer many premium services, such as cursed gnomes. These gnomes are filled with animal waste in order to smell horrible and attract lots of insects. This part is where the dark web kind of creeps in, because this part creeps me out. Want to really bother them? We will place them both inside and outside the property. Just be sure to schedule us when the person isn't at the property. So they're offering a break-in, a home break-in here as well. We also offer gnome haunting, a new premium service where every time a gnome is removed from the property, we will replace it the next day with 2 more gnomes. Now, this service is only offered in America at the moment, but who knows where it might spread.
I mean, funny elements to it, but I don't know how light it is in the sense that you're
in
breaking
comparison,
into
it's light. But yeah, shitty garden gnomes in your house.
Yeah,
It would creep you out, wouldn't it? And disgust you.
It would. It would disgust me, particularly. The other two?
Mystery or happy boxes. So using the slogan, you never really know what you're opening, one dark website called Happy Box offers a choice of 4 different boxes. Limited box, which is open to everyone and filled with fun surprises. A basic box for trusted customers with a special code. A premium box, premium experiences await trusted customers with a special code. And an Uber box, the ultimate box for the most adventurous, available only with a special code. So basically, I mean, there are lots of different reports online as to what has turned out. And there are people that make content about this, by the way, and unbox things on their YouTube channel and things. What actually turns up inside these so-called happy boxes? This is where some of them do actually get a little bit jarring. Some people report opening boxes to find jars containing teeth, sealed bags of animal remains, or dolls that look less like toys and more like they've lived a previous life. Others describe items that feel staged to tell a story, a torn child's backpack, a stained wedding dress, or a handwritten note listing coordinates or cryptic clues, which is not someone else is doing cryptic clues. Then there are also boxes that allegedly contain things that shouldn't be circulating at all. Unlabeled powders, small weapons, fake IDs, or USB drives, which contents are mysteries best left unexplored. And then when you think it can't get any stranger, some people also claim to receive completely ordinary items, a working phone, a tablet, knockoff watches, books, fake Rolexes, or even kitchen utensils. And sometimes the boxes are completely empty.
There you go. A lot of animal waste seems to be the dark web full of it, which is interesting. Full of shit. And yes, guys, as this is the decompression session, I also had a bit of something I found interesting, because obviously it's series 13. I wanted to dig into a bit as to why the number 13 is such a thing, why people fear it, or why it's led to people being so intrigued by that number, because I didn't really know much about it. Do you guys know anything about it? Why 13?
No. The only thing I know is that they don't have 13th floors in hotel buildings. That's all I really know.
I've got more as to where.
Oh, the origin story.
The origins.
Yeah, no idea.
So a lot of it's to do with religion, which isn't much of a surprise. But at the Last Supper, there was 13 people at the table, Jesus plus 12 apostles. Judas the betrayer often been described as the 13th to arrive. So this helped kind of cement the idea that 13 at the table brings misfortune. From Norse mythology, a banquet in Valhalla had 12 gods. Then Loki arrived uninvited as a 13th.
Loki. Not very Loki.
Tarot cards, the card 13 is death. In the calendar, there's a problem with it. So basically, many ancient cultures prize 12 as 12 months, 12 zodiac signs, 12 Olympian gods. The lunar calendars often has 13 full moons, which clash with solar systems and religious schedules, adding it as unruly. And also with Friday the 13th, the reason why that was kind of pointed out was Friday already had a bit of a bad reputation because Jesus was crucified on that day.
Bloody hell.
So Friday the 13th became a superstition powerhouse, and a lot of people actually fear this date and this time, and the fear is so common that it comes with a name, which I'm going to absolutely murder. I'm putting the word in our group chat because I really struggle.
Oh, Jesus.
With words like this.
Triskaidekaphobia.
I mean, he smashed it in one, hasn't he?
Triskaidekaphobia.
There you go.
Triskaidekaphobia.
There you go. Yeah, so people were so scared that they come under that name. And like Ben mentioned, many buildings do skip the 13th floor. Airlines skip the row 13.
Ooh.
And some people avoid major decisions on that particular day.
The thing you said about lunars instead of using months as well, that's just reminded me of my old job. They worked in lunars instead of months as like a productivity thing. It's just pissed me off.
But yeah, very interesting one. The only other thing I was going to say, I didn't have a lookalike for this case for Peter Scully, but that interview, he really gave me the feeling of a Sunday or Saturday league referee in the kids league who took it way too seriously. He had that kind of air about him where he was just kind of like, I don't know, very smug and arrogant and like just the power hungry kind of vibe of him.
Yeah.
But I couldn't think of any lookalikes for him. He has a face where it's something, he does look like someone, but I couldn't figure out who.
I've got one.
Go
on, Dan.
But it's very, very niche.
Okay.
Do you remember if I can play it?
Oh no, I think he's got the
off.
same as me. I think he's done the same as me if he's playing a clip.
Do you remember this?
Is it the fucking dog bark man?
Yes, the dog
Fuck's
man.
sake.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I got that as well, look.
As soon as they saw me, they came bounding over. And I just made it into the...
Bang on for me. That's the first person I thought of when I saw Peter Scully.
Yeah, there's definitely a link there.
I also went with James Cromwell, the farmer from Babe. I feel like I've used him before. I feel like it's quite unkind on Cromwell.
Yeah, Cromwell, I think I use him for
It's
the...
quite good. It's not bad.
Was he the Golden State, was he, as well? Did you have him for him?
Can't remember. Don't think... I can't remember. Maybe I haven't used him, but I feel like I've spoken about Babe before. But the dog bark man, as if, Dan. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, we'll put that up in the... we'll put both of those up on the stories as well for you guys to vote and let us know who you think. And again, let us know if you have any other lookalikes you think suit that as well. Just another thing, we are going to do decompression sessions at the end of each episode because it is going to be our darkest series ever, like we said. But we want to get you guys involved. So if you want to, we're going to have a comment on our Facebook group. Ben, what's the name of the Facebook group?
I Could Murder a Podcast True Crime Listeners and Discussion Group. Lovely little community in there. Post almost every day in there. People posting case requests and stories and, feedback. We post all of our references from episodes as well. So I'll post all of the Peter Scully references into the group when the episode goes live. But yeah, get over there.
So we want this part of the episode to be, you can ask any big questions. If it wants to be kind of like any, would you rather questions, or even if I really like the idea of it being a bit of an agony aunt corner where you guys have some issues. How would we solve these things for you? If you're struggling, you're trying to think of a creative thing, maybe our three brains together can think of something to help you guys out. Or it could be a fun story. It could be literally anything. It wants to be something lighthearted at the end of each episode. It doesn't have to be spooky. It doesn't have to be true crime related. It can just be something a bit silly. If you'd rather not put it in a public format like that and you'd rather just email us, hit us up at hello@icmap.co.uk. Just put decompression session as a subject matter at the top, and then it'll be great to hear from you guys, and we just want to have some lighthearted moments at the end of the episode, so please get involved.
Here's a really, because of the time of recording, we've just had Christmas and New Year, the snow is falling. Did you see about the guy who had a YouTube channel, Tom? I think I've already spoke to Dan about this, but the guy who had the fireplace channel on YouTube, one video? No. Insane. So basically he had a little campfire in his garden, filmed it, put it on loop for 10 hours. How many millions of people do you think viewed it over the Christmas period just gone?
Go big, I'll say 32.
132 million people viewed it. He's made $1 million off of one video of a YouTube channel he created. I mean, if he still even knows, he created the channel 10 years ago. One video, campfire loop and he's now made a healthy sum if he still has access to the channel.
Fair play.
Yeah, there you go.
Or her.
Or them.
Was it him?
Yep, fair play.
Yeah.
Fair play indeed. And Ben, have you got a little cryptic clue for us for the next episode?
I have indeed. Hit it.
Benjamin Carter's Cryptic Clues.
So the cryptic clue for the second episode of the series is Robin Hood wants his money back. Robin Hood wants his money back.
Yeah, that kind of works.
Yeah, we're back, baby.
Starting off with a solid one. Solid one there. And yes, guys, we'll be back again next week with episode 2 of the new series. We hope you guys enjoy it. It's going to be a dark ride through this series, but yes, we're excited to share with you guys these cases, all stories that need to not be forgotten. And until next time, like we always say,
we say this all the time.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Wow. Well, unless it's doing any of that. Yeah. Complaining about prison food when you are a disgusting little demon man.
Yeah. Don't ask for corned beef if you deserve.
You don't deserve corned beef.
Corn shit, really. If your house is getting raided, pop on some trousers.
Yes. What? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pop leg in.
Trouser leg.
Yeah. All right, guys.
See ya.
See you later. Toodle pip.